Students, Assalamu alaikum. I am Mushtaq Malik, lecturer of geography at Supur. Today we are going to discuss about the minerals in rocks of class 11th, unit 4, chapter 5. In earlier classes you may have studied about rocks. Let us know how rocks are formed and how they can be identified after knowing their types and the classification and structure. We know the rocks are aggregate of minerals. When cemented together, they form solid and compact mass in the form of rock. So the main constituents of the rock is its minerals. Let us know first minerals. Minerals. Minerals are the natural inorganic substances composed of atoms, either one single chemical element or number of different elements. There are over 4,000 different minerals and each one is distinguished by its chemical composition and its crystal structure. Minerals are made of elements. Elements are pure substances that cannot be broken into simpler substances. Atom is the smallest part of an element. Some most common minerals present in the lithosphere are phosphorus, quartz, pyroxene, mica, olivine, etc. Let us see in the slide 3. These minerals are grouped into two classes. Silicate, one class is silicate group and another is non-silicate group. In silicate group, those minerals which contain silicon and the oxygen. About 90% of our crust is made of these silicate minerals. Silicate minerals are phosphor, biotite, quartz and mica, etc. While as in the non-silicate group, those minerals which are in combination of oxygen, iron, carbon and sulfur. These minerals do not have silica content. For example, copper, gold, calcite, fluorite, galena. The minerals are further divided into two groups as per their metallic property. One is the metallic mineral group and the another is non-metallic mineral group. In metallic group, there are three types of the minerals. One is called the precious metals. These metals are of high economic value. For example, gold, silver, platinum, etc. Second group is the ferrous metals. These metals contain the iron content and often mixed with iron to form the various kinds of the steel. And the third group is non-ferrous metals, which do not contain iron content, like copper, lead, zinc, tin, aluminum, etc. In non-metallic group of minerals are those minerals which do not contain metals, like sulfur, phosphorus, sodium, nitrate, etc. For example, cement is a mixture of non-metals. In the next slide, we will see that the minerals can also be identified by their physical properties, like texture. Let us go one by one. Number 1, color. Most of the minerals are same color, while some minerals have many colors. Second, the luster. Minerals can also be identified by their appearance. It is the quality and intensity of the mineral to reflect light. It can be expressed as dull, pearly, silky, glassy, vitreous, non-vitreous, etc. Hardness. Hardness of the mineral can be calculated by Mohs scale, which is from 1 to 10. For example, talc has a 1 hardness and the diamond has a 10. Similarly, they can be identified by the streak, means the powder form of the mineral, It is visualized and compared with the solid mineral. Density. Density of a mineral is the weight of the mineral and is calculated by the gram per cubic centimeter. Minerals are also identified by their crystal structure and shape. Mineral crystals are of cubic, hexagonal, tetragonal, monoclinic, etc. shapes. Dear students, let us know about the rocks. What the rocks are? Rocks are naturally occurring consolidated substances which may be made up minerals or other rock pieces of fossil material. Rocks are result of the various geological processes that occur both beneath and on the surface of the earth. Rocks do not have a definite composition of mineral constituents like feldspar, quartz are the most minerals found in the rocks. The science which studies the rocks is known as petrology. Rocks are of three types: igneous rocks, sedimentary rocks, metamorphic rocks. Igneous rocks. Igneous rocks. These rocks are formed after the solidification of magma in and on the surface of the lithosphere. These rocks are made of crystals which can be aligned or layered, for example, granite, pegmatite, gabbro, basalt, etc. Sedimentary rocks is the second group of the rocks. These rocks are as the result of the consolidation of the sediments derived and transported by the exogenic processes and deposited into the layers. For example, sandstone, conglomerate, limestone, shale, etc. Third group of the rocks is metamorphic rocks. These rocks are produced by the alteration or the recrystallization due to the increased pressure and heat. For example, schist, marble, garnet, gneiss, etc. Let us see the rock cycle in next slide. See in the diagram, igneous rocks after weathering, erosion, transportation and deposition and compaction change it into sedimentary rocks. These rocks are under the impact of the heat and pressure or turned into the metamorphic rocks. And the metamorphic rocks get melt and erupts and solidifies and change it into the igneous rocks again. Again the circle is repeated in an anti-clockwise as shown in the diagram. Let us go to identification of the igneous rocks now. Igneous rocks can be identified by this classification as shown in the table. These rocks are formed due to the solidification of the magma at different levels. On this basis, they are classified into four groups. Number one, on the basis of the occurrence. Second, on the basis of the texture. Third, on the basis of the chemical composition. And fourth, on the basis of the mineral composition. On the basis of the occurrence, the rocks are classified into two groups: the intrusive rocks and the extrusive rocks. Intrusive rocks are those rocks which are solidified in the inner layers of the lithosphere, while as the extrusive rocks are those which are solidified on the surface of the earth. Now the intrusive rocks are further divided into two groups. One is plutonic rocks and other is hypabasal rocks. Plutonic rocks are those which are solidified in the deep layers of the lithosphere, and their crystal size is coarse due to the slow solidification, like granite, pegmatite, gabbro. While as the hypabasal rocks are those rocks which are solidified at the shallow layers and the cracks of the lithosphere. The grain size of these rocks are medium size. For example, microgranite, dolerite, mica, etc. Now the exogenic rocks are also of two types, that is volcanic rocks and the pyroclastic rocks. Volcanic rocks are those rocks which solidify immediately after the eruption on the surface of the earth. In this process, there is a little time for the rocks to develop the crystals due to the rapid cooling. So these rocks are of glassy texture. For example, microgabbro, etc. Pyroclastic rocks are those rocks which are formed in the combination with the volcanic dust and the volcanic rocks after the solidification and get mixed. So these rocks have both coarse grained as well as the fine grained texture. For example, pyroclastic breccia. Now on the basis of the texture, these igneous rocks are further divided into the four groups on the basis of the texture. For number 1, the glassy texture. Number 2, the aphanetic texture. Number 3, the phaneritic texture. And number 4, porphyritic texture. Number 1, glassy texture. In rocks where the crystals are invisible and cannot be seen through the naked eyes are called as glassy textured rocks. For example, obsidian rocks. In second class of rocks, that is aphanetic textured rocks. Rocks where the crystals are visualized by means with the help of the microscope. For example, fine-grained rocks. The example these rocks are of basalt. Third group of rocks, that is known as phaneritic textured rocks, in which the crystals of the rocks are visible, or we can say the coarse-grained textured rocks. For example, granite. Number 4 is the porphyritic textured rocks. In this type of rocks, both fine as well as the coarse-grained crystals are observed. For example, granite. Igneous rocks are also identified by their chemical composition on the basis of the silica content. These rocks are divided into four groups again. Number 1 is called the acidic rocks. Second group is intermediate rocks. Third is basic rocks. And fourth is ultra basic rocks. In acidic rocks, when the silicon content is greater than 66%, then these rocks are called as acidic rocks. When the silica content is between 52 to 66%, then these rocks are called as intermediate rocks. And when the silicon content is between 44 to 52%, then these rocks are called as basic rocks. And when the silica content is less than 44%, then these rocks are called as the ultra basic rocks. Igneous rocks are again also identified by their mineral composition. On the basis of the mineral composition, the rocks are divided into the two groups. Number 1 is called the felsic rocks, and the second group is called the mafic rocks. Felsic rocks are those rocks which contain iron with silica. The composition of the crystals or composition of the mineral is feldspar plus quartz. For example, granite and rhyolite. Mafic rocks are those rocks which contain the magnesium with feldspars, and the composition is olivine plus pyroxene. And the rocks are like gabbro basalt rocks. Now in the next slide, we see how the sedimentary rocks are identified. On the basis of the formation, these rocks are grouped into the two categories. Number 1 is nature of the sediment. Second is the place of the deposition. On the basis of the sediment, these rocks are divided into three categories. Number 1 is mechanically formed rocks. Second is chemically formed rocks, and third is organically formed rocks. In mechanically formed rocks, when the parent rock is undergone weathering, erosion, transportation, and deposition, and turn it into layers, get us compaction, and turn it into the consolidated form. For example, sand particles, when cemented together, they form sandstone. And pebbles and the boulders, when cemented together, they form the conglomerate rock. Similarly, the silt is, when cemented together, they form the shale. Now, the chemically formed rocks. These rocks are formed due to the dissolved salts from the parent rocks. This salt is get deposited into the layers after the evaporation in lakes, rivers, or closed seas. For example, calcium. When calcium is deposited in the rock, they form the gypsum rock. Similarly, the sodium, when gets deposited, they form the rock salt. And the pyrite, when get deposited, they form the sulfur rock. Organically formed rocks. Those rocks which are formed due to the disintegration and the decaying of the animals and plants, whereby the calcium is released and get deposited in the rock beds. For example, limestone. Sedimentary rocks are further divided into the three groups on the basis of their transporting agent. Number one is the argillaceous rocks, second is the undulation rocks, third is the moraines. Argillaceous rocks are those rocks which are formed in the waters. For example, sandstone, shale, and chert. These rocks are further divided into the three groups, that is marine argillaceous rock, lacustrine argillaceous rock, and riverine argillaceous rocks. Marine argillaceous rocks are found in seas, lacustrine argillaceous rocks are found in lakes, and riverine argillaceous are found in rivers. Second type of rocks is called the undulation rocks. These rocks are formed due to the deposition of the sand by the wind movement. These rocks are in unconsolidated form. Third is the moraines. These rocks are formed due to the deposition of the glacier load. These rocks are known as the lateral moraines, medial moraines, etc. Now we go to the third type of the rock, which are called as the metamorphic rocks. Metamorphic rocks are also identified by their classification. They are grouped into the two categories. Number one is called the foliated rocks and another is called the non-foliated rocks. Foliated rocks are those rocks in which the crystal grains are arranged parallel to the layers of the rocks as shown in the diagram. For example, shale is changed into the slate after the metamorphosis and the layered structure of the slate is seen. Non-foliated rocks, when the crystal grains are arranged randomly to the layers of the rock. When, for example, limestone after metamorphosis is changed into the marble. Here we see the no layer is seen in these rocks. Now, in this slide, we see the metamorphosis of the rocks. Those rocks which are changed from sedimentary to the metamorphic are called as meta-sedimentary rocks. And when the igneous rocks are subject to the metamorphosis, they are called as meta-igneous rocks. Now we see the meta-sedimentary rocks. When the sedimentary rocks are subjected to the metamorphosis, limestone is changed into the marble, sandstone is changed into the quartz, and the shale is changed into the slate, and peat is changed into improvol. When the igneous rocks are subjected to the metamorphosis, they are changed into, like granite is changed into the gneiss, gabbro is changed into serpentine, and the basalt is changed into eclogenate. Dear students, so this was all about my topic. I hope this will help you in understanding about the rocks and the minerals. Now I will go to the assignment. List the minerals which are most commonly present in the lithosphere. Give the classification of the igneous rocks, and draw a diagram showing the rock cycle. Thank you.